There are moments in the history of air power when everything changes not gradually, not predictably, but all at once. Moments when a single conflict forces militaries, analysts, and governments to confront an uncomfortable reality that what they believe to be decisive might no longer be. We may be living through one of those moments right now. The war in Ukraine, grinding, attritional and brutally efficient in its use of modern weaponry, has evolved into something far more than a regional conflict. It has become the most important real-world testing ground for 21st century warfare. A laboratory, not in theory, but in blood, steel, and constant adaptation. And what this laboratory is revealing is deeply unsettling for many long-standing assumptions. Assumptions about which fighter jets dominate the skies. Assumptions about whether stealth alone guarantees survivability. Assumptions about whether the most advanced and most expensive systems are actually the most effective. But before we draw conclusions, we need to slow down, because the conversation surrounding this topic is filled with noise, overhyped headlines, misleading claims, and narratives shaped as much by industrial interests as by reality. So instead, we start with something simpler, facts, and we follow those facts wherever they lead. Let's begin with the aircraft at the center of this conversation, the Saab Jas-39 Gripen. At first glance, the Gripen doesn't look revolutionary. It's not the largest fighter, it doesn't have stealth shaping like fifth-generation aircraft, and it doesn't carry the same aura of technological dominance as something like the F-35. But that perception misses the point entirely. Because the Gripen was never designed to impress, it was designed to survive. Originally developed by Sweden during the Cold War, the Gripen reflects a very specific strategic mindset. A small nation, facing a larger adversary, with limited resources and no margin for catastrophic loss, Sweden assumed its air bases would be targeted and destroyed early in any conflict. It assumed supply lines would be disrupted. It assumed that survival would depend not on perfection but on resilience. So Saab designed the Gripen accordingly. Not just as a fighter but as a system. A system that could operate from highways. A system that could be refueled and rearmed in minutes. A system that required minimal ground crew. A system that could disperse, disappear, and reappear unpredictably. That philosophy has remained intact, refined, but never abandoned, and it reaches its most advanced form in the Gripen E. The Gripen E is not simply an upgraded version of its predecessors, it is a fundamental redesign. It is slightly larger, heavier, and significantly more capable than the earlier CD variants. With a maximum takeoff weight of around 16,500 kilograms and 40% more internal fuel, it can operate at ranges approaching 4,000 kilometers, with a combat radius exceeding 1,300 kilometers. At its core is the General Electric F414 GE39E engine, a proven turbofan delivering around 22,000 pounds of thrust. This allows the aircraft to reach Mach 2 at altitude and maintain supercruise at approximately Mach 1.25 without afterburner. These are not record-breaking numbers, but they are carefully balanced, and that balance is deliberate. Because unlike some modern programs, the Gripen E was not designed around pushing technological limits at all costs. It was designed to operate reliably, within known constraints, in conditions where failure is not an option. Now this brings us to a critical point, one that has been widely misunderstood. Despite what you may have seen online, the Gripen E is not powered by a Rolls-Royce engine. It uses the General Electric F414. That is a fact. The idea of a Rolls-Royce powered Gripen comes from a separate discussion, one that is real, but still hypothetical. Analysts have long speculated about integrating an EJ20 odoride engine, potentially boosting thrust significantly and enabling even greater supercruise performance. But as of now, this remains a concept. No flight tests, no operational deployment, no combat validation. And distinguishing between what exists and what is merely proposed is essential, because confusion here leads to flawed conclusions. Now let's shift from engineering to geopolitics. Because the real turning point in this story didn't happen in a lab or a design office. It happened in October 2025. At Saab's production facility in Linköping, a historic announcement was made. Ukraine actively engaged in a full-scale war, committed to acquiring at least 100 Gripen fighters, with deliveries expected to begin in 2026. This was not a symbolic gesture. It was a decision made under the most extreme conditions imaginable. A nation under constant attack, evaluating what it actually needs to survive. President Volodymyr Zelensky made the priority clear. The Gripen was not optional, it was essential. And that raises the most important question in this entire discussion. Why? The answer lies not in a single feature, but in a combination of design choices that align almost perfectly with the realities of modern warfare. First, dispersed operations. Ukraine's air bases have been repeatedly targeted by missiles and drones. Fixed infrastructure is a liability. The Gripen's ability to operate from roads, highways, and improvised strips is not a convenience, it is a survival mechanism. Second, availability. In high-intensity conflict, the number of aircraft that are ready to fly at any given moment matters more than theoretical performance. The Gripen's design emphasizes quick maintenance, minimal crew requirements, and rapid turnaround times. Reports suggest availability rates of around 85% or higher under optimal conditions. That's not just efficiency, that's combat power. Third, cost and scalability. Ukraine doesn't just need advanced aircraft, it needs enough of them to defend its airspace consistently. The Gripen's lower acquisition and operating costs make that possible. Fourth, weapons capability. The integration of the Meteor missile gives the Gripen a powerful edge in beyond visual range combat. Its extended no-escape zone changes engagement dynamics in ways that traditional missiles cannot. And finally, partnership. Saab's willingness to transfer technology, support local production, and treat Ukraine as a long-term industrial partner, not just a customer, represents a fundamentally different approach compared to more restrictive programs. Now, contrast all of this with the F-35. There is no denying that the F-35 is one of the most advanced fighter aircraft ever built. Its stealth capabilities, sensor fusion, and network integration are genuinely groundbreaking. But the question isn't whether it's advanced. The question is whether it's optimized for the kind of war we are now seeing. At the center of this debate is the F-35's engine, the Pratt & Whitney F135. And this is where things become complicated. Because, despite its power, the F-135 has faced persistent challenges. As the F-35 program evolved, the aircraft's demands for cooling and electrical power increased significantly. But the engine, originally designed to earlier specifications, was never fully adapted to meet those growing requirements. The result is an engine operating under stress, higher temperatures, reduced lifespan, increased maintenance cycles. In fact, senior officials have acknowledged that the engine has effectively been running beyond its intended limits since early in the program. To address this, a major upgrade effort is now underway, costing hundreds of millions, with delivery timelines stretching toward the end of the decade. This doesn't make the F-35 ineffective, but it does highlight a critical issue. Complexity comes at a cost. And that brings us to the broader strategic picture. The F-35 was designed for a world where stealth and information dominance were expected to define air combat. A world where advanced sensors, data sharing, and low observability would outweigh traditional metrics like speed, range, and simplicity. But Ukraine is showing us something different. It's showing that dispersal can be more important than invisibility. Availability can matter more than peak performance. Simplicity can outperform complexity under pressure, and adaptability can be the difference between survival and loss. The Gripen embodies these principles not because it predicted the future perfectly, but because it was built around constraints that forced practical solutions. So what does all of this mean? It doesn't mean the F-35 is obsolete. It doesn't mean stealth is irrelevant. And it doesn't mean one aircraft is universally better than another. What it means is that the definition of effectiveness is changing, and in that changing landscape, aircraft like the Gripen, once seen as secondary options, are now moving to the center of the conversation. Because in the end, war has a way of cutting through theory. It doesn't care about marketing. It doesn't care about projections. It doesn't care about what was promised. War reveals what actually works. And right now, that revelation is forcing the world to rethink the future of air power.